here from Evening Star Astrology. I hope you're all doing well today. Thank you for being here and thank you for coming to another video. Today I have your forecast for the astrology of 2021, the entire year. This video is quite daunting for me because my forecasts are normally on a weekly scale, and so jumping from a 7-day time period where I can focus in on every little detail to trying to cover enough of the astrology of 2021 without making a 5-hour long video is intense, but I'm a Virgo rising. I have a lot of Capricorn in my chart, so we have a very organized video plan for today. And yeah, let's just dive right into it. I have a mug of coffee because I'm still finishing my morning coffee, but if you want to grab a drink, this is going to be a bit of a longer video, so it might be nice to settle down and have a little snack, have a little warm beverage, and let's dive right into it. So just to give you an overview of this video, in this essay I will, first we're going to talk about the Great Conjunction, because although that aspect happened in 2020, I'm recording on the 20th right now, so it's happening tomorrow. It sets the tone for 2021 in such a way that we can't really just like sweep it under the rug with the rest of the astrology of 2020. We want to throw most of it in the garbage, but this one we actually have to hold on to. So I'm going to talk about that first. Next, I'm going to talk about some major aspects this year. There aren't a ton to talk about. 2020 was quite intense astrologically because all the planets got stacked up on each other and a lot of the outer planets were talking to each other, and it was overwhelming, quite honestly. However, in 2021, there's one major aspect that happens a couple of times, which I'll touch on, but there's not quite as many big aspects, so you can breathe a little bit easier, especially if you are a cardinal sign, if you have a lot of Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn in your chart. 2021 is going to give you a chance to breathe easy and, catch a bit of a break. Next, we'll talk about the eclipses of 2021, and then we'll talk about the retrogrades of 2021. Also, I did want to mention that, like I said, for time's sake, I cannot cover every single new and full moon, every single time Mercury moves into a new sign, every single time an outer planet goes retrograde. There's a lot of planetary shifts throughout the year, and in my weekly forecasts in 2021, I'll obviously talk about the more minor aspects. However, if you are interested in seeing on a larger scale when the planets are changing signs, you want to know when Mars is going to be in Cancer or when the new moon in Virgo is going to be, and you want the exact date, I've compiled a list of all of those. It is up on my astrology website, and I'll put a link down in the description box below so that if you want to research that or refer back to that at any time during the year, you can do so. I like having a list of those things. I like to keep a list of astrological dates, important ones in my bullet journal and all of that, so I wanted to share that with you. Again, that's up on my astrology website, but for this video, we're mainly focusing on large, long-term things. Okay, so this intro has been very long. Let's start with the Great Conjunction. This aspect is happening on December 21st. So the Great Conjunction, which has this infamous title, which is quite a little bit daunting, oh my gosh, is it the end of the world? Might be. But this aspect is when Jupiter and Saturn line up in the sky. If you think back to the ominous type of prophecy of when the planets align, when the stars align, whatever, this is that aspect. Because Jupiter and Saturn are the last two visible planets in the sky. I don't mean visible as in do we see them or not, but visible as in can you see it with the naked eye? And if you were to go outside on December 21st, you would be able to see this alignment in the sky. You would be able to see the two planets lining up. And if you can think back to a time before light pollution, the ancient Greeks, Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, the Indians from India, not American Indians, and you can imagine looking up in the sky and seeing these two huge planets lining up. It's kind of a big deal. That's why it has this big deal name. So this aspect happens every 20 years, and that in and of itself is significant. Last time it happened was in 2000. Before that, I think it was 1981. But it marks the beginning of a 20-year cycle every single time it happens. So the end of 2020 / beginning of 2021 marks the beginning of a new 20-year cycle. However, this also marks the beginning of a new 200-year cycle, because for 200 years at a time, when it makes these aspects every 20 years, but for 200 years at a time, Jupiter and Saturn will meet up, conjunct, in the same element. So they'll meet up in all air signs, in all earth signs, in all water signs, or all fire signs. And the last 200 years, these two planets have been meeting up in earth signs, which are, of course, Capricorn, Virgo, and Taurus. And now, because this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is, I feel like I'm talking really slowly, which is strange for me, apologies. But this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, this great conjunction on December 21st is happening in Aquarius, which is an air sign. So not only are we having a great conjunction, which means the beginning of a new 20-year cycle, this conjunction is in an air sign, which marks the beginning of a new 200-year cycle. To give some context to that, if we think back to the last 200 years, where these two planets have been meeting up in earth signs, there's been a lot of focus on capitalism, material growth, using natural resources for human gain. The Industrial Revolution kind of like wrapped up right around the time that these conjunctions started happening in earth signs. So we think everything from like the Industrial Revolution on, and the amount of growth that has happened in that time through industry and travel and like anything that you can think that is tangible or physical, because earth is very material and real. Like you can see it, you can taste it, I guess, but you can like touch it. So we're moving from that into an age of air, and air is about ideas, communication, the intellect, and we don't always see air. Obviously, it's not really an element that you can just like grab in your hand, but we can see the impact of air. You can see the way that like sand dunes change over time when the wind keeps blowing on it. Or even like when you're walking down the street, you can see like a piece of garbage floating along, like a plastic bag, just like drifting through the wind. With this, thinking about Jupiter and Saturn, we're moving from an era of this being a super tangible and material and physical and being able to see and touch the changes in the world, to having these changes be in a very intellectual and cerebral and intangible way. For example, social media, I feel like, is going to change. The internet. Oh, I forgot to mention that Saturn moving into Aquarius is the Saturn return of the internet. So over the next 3 years, and especially in 2021, because Jupiter is playing in as well there's growth and change with the way the internet functions, with the way the internet is regulated. And we're already beginning to see this shift of more regulations on intangible things like the internet and digital money like Bitcoin and stuff, which I don't know a lot about, but I feel like that's going to become more relevant. More things that we can't see but like hold the same weight as things that we can like hold and touch. There is a shift in the way that the internet and social media are regulated in a way that we haven't seen before. And this is going to continue probably for the next 200 years to some extent, especially the next 20 years, and especially 2021, because Jupiter will be present in Aquarius. I feel like I've talked for a long time. I'm probably going to cut about half of this out, but basically the Great Conjunction on the 21st marks a shift in the way that we regulate and control things, and we will experience a change by going from development and rules and regulations surrounding very physical, financial, and material things to more intangible, intellectual, or communication, internet, things that you can't see or touch type of things. So that's the Great Conjunction. Let's dive into the main aspects for 2021. Again, I have my notes, so that's why I keep looking down. So when it comes to the astrology of 2021, there are two main things I want to talk about. The first is Saturn Uranus squares. I think I've said this before on this channel, but squares are harsh aspects. I like to think of it as kind of a four-way intersection where you both have stop signs, and it's kind of like, do you go? Do I go? Like, I don't want to T-bone you, but also like, I want to keep going and continue on my path and do my thing. So Saturn is our planet of rules, restraints, challenges, limitations, kind of cracking down. And Uranus is radical change, rebellion, mixing things up, innovation, trying new things. These two planets are quite interesting together, especially because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, which is associated with material comfort, our very basic needs of food and shelter. And then Saturn is in Aquarius, which is all about new ideas, and it's still a Saturn ruled sign, so it's not as radical as people often think Aquarius is. But Aquarius is still about ideas and thinking outside the box, and these are the rules. How can I work within these rules to change what I want to change? And they are both fixed signs, so any changes that result from these aspects throughout the year will be slow. It's not going to be an immediate shift overnight. It will be, we'll plant the seeds and then maybe in a couple years we'll actually see the results of it. So this challenging aspect happens 3 times this year. The first is on February 17th, the second is on June 14th, and then the third is on December 24th. This is because Saturn passes Uranus, goes retrograde, passes by it again, and then when it goes direct again, it passes by it a third time. And the first time it happens, Mars and Jupiter are in play as well. Jupiter is co-present with Saturn, so this aspect is not quite as challenging because Jupiter wants to help. Jupiter wants to grow and wants to change. And then Mars will also be in Taurus at that point, so there's definitely a bit of like an angry need to get things done sooner than later at this point. So this, of course, could be changes in ideas, but then also changes in food, shelter, security, and safety. Maybe new regulations or new ways that we help people in that. I'm not a mundane astrologer, so this really isn't my area of expertise. However, it is really significant to mention Saturn versus Uranus because this has coincided with periods of extreme change in the way society functions and the way government functions. And sometimes it can lean more towards, a progressive worldview. And at other times it can manifest as more like extreme conservatism. We've seen that this year with the single stimulus check that was sent out, and nothing has come since. So there could be something related to the stimulus check or helping out people who need government assistance, or there could be, a shutdown even further of like people are completely on their own. To wrap up this aspect though, again, it happens on the 17th. Mars and Jupiter are kind of adding a certain flavor there. On June 14th, Jupiter isn't there to help, so I feel like this one might be a little bit more harsh, more restraint than change. And then on December 24th, it happens for a final time. And oftentimes when we have an aspect that happens 3 times, like consecutively, the third time is kind of the final hard-hitting last word type of thing. So whatever is started on February 17th will be wrapped up, or change will start to be enacted on it, and in a very final, like, let's go now type of way on December 24th. Moving on to Jupiter, which I'm excited about because the astrology of 2020 was kind of garbage. It was absolutely garbage, actually. And part of the reason it was because Jupiter was in a sign that it's not happy in. Jupiter is in his fall in Capricorn. Jupiter does not have the resources that he needs to be abundant and generous and, grow and expand in Capricorn. So Jupiter moving into Aquarius, although it's still a Saturn ruled sign, Jupiter does a bit better there. However, one of the highlights of 2021 is Jupiter moving into Pisces, which is one of the signs that he rules. So on May 13th, Jupiter moves into Pisces, and this little period, this little glimpse of Jupiter in Pisces lasts from May 13th until June 20th, because on June 20th, Jupiter goes retrograde. Jupiter moves back into Aquarius on July 28th and then goes direct October 17th. So again, that's a nice little preview of 2022 and a little glimmer of hope, if you will. And then Jupiter at the end of the year enters Pisces for real on December 28th. And I already mentioned this in the video, but the faster moving planets, if you want to know what dates those are going to change signs, check out the article on my website because that will give you all the details on that. But then besides that, Jupiter moves signs at the end of this year, and then the rest of the outer planets stay in the sign that they're in. Saturn is in Aquarius all year, Uranus is in Taurus all year, Neptune is in Pisces all year, and Pluto is in Capricorn all year. Pluto and Neptune don't really do a lot this year. Uranus has those squares with Saturn, but that's about it for Uranus. Okay, I feel like this video is getting a little rambly and I'm losing the organization that I thought I had. To recap main aspects for this year, Saturn square Aquarius will happen 3 times, and those 3 times are February 17th, June 14th and December 24th. This is rules and regulations and tradition versus innovation, change, rebellion, and trying something new. And then Jupiter is our other big player this year, just because he makes this really beautiful transit into Pisces for a little while, and we have about a month to see what could be when Jupiter has all the resources available to him. And you'll be able to see what growth and abundance and change will be coming for you in 2022 through this little glimmer of hope. Let's move on to the eclipses. In 2020, the nodes moved from the Cancer-Capricorn axis into the Gemini-Sagittarius. We have the North Node in Gemini and the South Node in Sagittarius. And the North Node is things that we want to increase, and the South Node is things we want to decrease. I'm not an expert on the nodes. There are other astrologers who you can check out if you want to learn more about the nodes. But just to give you a brief overview, with the North Node in Gemini, there is an increase in communications, in details, and kind of fast-paced things. So think like TikTok videos versus TV shows or movies. Think like short articles or getting your information from Twitter versus reading a newspaper. And then with the South Node in Sagittarius, Sagittarius has this very overarching, very grand scale type of vision. It's kind of blanket statements at its finest. And so we're decreasing this all or nothing or big picture thinking and increasing details and nuances. And then one last thing before I get into the dates and specifics of the eclipses, we have Neptune making a square to both the nodes. So Neptune is here, and then the North and South Node are here. So, it's a T-square, 90-degree angles between each other. I hope my hand signals made any sense. But with Neptune, there's always this element of confusion, of haze, not seeing the truth because you're caught up in the dreams. And so because Sagittarius and Gemini are so information focused, I feel like there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done this year in kind of clearing away the illusions, getting rid of false narratives and all of that, and really kind of discerning what is true, what isn't, what's good information, what's not reliable or good information. So that's the general tone for the eclipses this year. There's, changing the way that we view and process information, moving to a more quick-paced and nuanced way of consuming information, and releasing these like one-size-fits-all narratives, and also kind of going through the weeds and pruning away what's not true and what is kind of covering up the truth. For our 4 eclipses this year, on May 26th, we have a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. Lunar eclipses are full moons, so they're periods of release, kind of culmination, but then also like reaching the peak and being prepared to let things fall away from that. And with this lunar eclipse on the South Node, there's this element of releasing these blanket statements, like I said, this one-size-fits-all philosophy of government, of worldview. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but eclipses don't necessarily bring a lot of change or don't hold a lot of importance on that specific day. Rather, it's kind of the kickstart for 6 months of change and development and leveling up, if you will. So this lunar eclipse in Sagittarius will, I think, kind of mark the beginning of a new way that we understand differences, understand diversity, understanding that like phrases like I don't see race, I don't see color are actually limiting. Even though these phrases sound very inclusive, we'll start to realize that there is more nuance that needs to be addressed and recognized and seen. So that's what I'm seeing for the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius on the 26th of May. And then a couple weeks later, on June 10th, we have our solar eclipse in Gemini. And the solar eclipse on the North Node, as you might guess, changes that we probably can't predict at this point, and new beginnings in the realm of news sources, how we share ideas, how we communicate, and doing it in a way that is more individual or perhaps more quick-paced or bite-sized. So on November 19th, we have a lunar eclipse in Taurus, and even though obviously the nodes are in Gemini and Sagittarius, the eclipse point, like when the full moon is happening, it's close enough by degree to the node that it qualifies as a lunar eclipse and will appear as such in certain parts of the world. Anyway, this lunar eclipse in Taurus I think is going to be a really important checkpoint, because by this point we will have already had 2 of the 3 Saturn Uranus squares. This I think will be some sort of checkpoint for the Saturn square Uranus aspects that we have earlier in the year, and this will kind of give us a chance to check in and see what needs to be released around these new changes that are coming, and what is working and what we want to continue to grow and work with. And then our final eclipse of the year is happening on December 3rd, 2021, which is my birthday, yay. And this solar eclipse happening on the South Node in Sagittarius is going to help highlight what we need to decrease, what, theories, philosophies, worldviews are not actually helpful anymore, and what we can do to eliminate them or at least change them so that they are more relevant for the world we live in today. Finally, let's move into retrogrades. This video is so long already. First, we have our Mercury retrogrades. These happen 3 to 4 times a year. Nothing super special. Okay, had to change the camera angle to get to a different journal that I'm using to prop up my camera right now. So, Mercury retrogrades. These happen 3 times a year, sometimes 4 times. They're not all that significant, but they happen, and it's worth noting if you are a Gemini or Virgo rising, you will likely always feel Mercury retrogrades more strongly because Mercury is the ruler of your ascendant, so they play an extra special role in your chart and you will feel it more strongly. But this year, our Mercury retrogrades are especially interesting because they are all happening in air signs. Mercury is the messenger, air signs are about communication. So our first Mercury retrograde is in Aquarius, and this happens from January 30th until February 20th. Mercury will go retrograde in the sign of Gemini from May 29th until June 22nd. And then finally, Mercury will go retrograde in the sign of Libra from September 26th until October 18th. So those are the Mercury retrogrades of the year. Venus will also go retrograde this year, and Venus will go retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, which is interesting because 2020 was really defined by all the planets piled up in Capricorn. So this will be a bit of a return to that, a bit of a checkpoint. And interestingly enough, Venus retrogrades, at least in the United States, have really strongly correlated with civil rights movements and uprisings. And so that is a very real possibility for the end of 2020. But in any case, Venus goes retrograde from December 19th until January 29th, 2022. So it comes in at the very tail end of the year and then marks the beginning of the next year, 2022. So be aware that's happening at the end of the year. Jupiter will go retrograde from June 20th until October 17th. It will go retrograde in the sign of Pisces and then move back into Aquarius. And then finally, Saturn will go retrograde in Aquarius from May 23rd until October 10th. We got through it all. Yay! And my coffee is cold now. Yay! I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed me kind of giving a big picture for the year ahead for 2021. There's a lot coming, and I hope that you are able to use these aspects to your advantage, or at least just be aware of them so that if you feel off on a certain day, you can be like, oh yeah, there's an eclipse. That's why I feel so weird. I've already said this a couple times, but again, if you do want a more specific or detailed list of what the planets are up to, and all of the planets, not just the ones I talked about in this video, you can head over to my website, link in the description box, and I'll have a list of all the planetary transits for 2021. That is all. Thank you so much for being here. Please leave a like and comment if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!